organization that exists to fund the preservation of sites of American bloodshed, recounts her ride in a sweeping narrative. It frames her as a brave and headstrong daughter of the colonies, who, unlike Revere, was never captured. I did know Paul Revere, a household name and a staple of lesson plans about the American Revolution. But Ludington had been passed over in the textbooks. She was immortalized on a United States Postal Service stamp printed in 1975, but she has otherwise never gotten her due. I felt a little miffed, a little outraged. Where was her museum, I wondered? Where had Ludington been when I memorized the details of the siege of Yorktown? I had learned other lessons. Was I in 1st or 3rd or 10th grade when I internalized what girls were and were not supposed to do? Did I even need to be taught? I had been a superlative and dutiful student. I was rewarded with good grades and effusive report cards. I was a pleasure to have in class. I was obedient. I waited to be called on. It never occurred to me that I might want to speak out of turn. People listened to me when I talked. I wasn't conscious of it then, but I must have expected the world to continue to reward that kind of compliance. As I sketched out the proposal to write this book, a historical account of girls' roles in American protest and a rigorous look at how the tropes of conventional girlhood have made them such able activists, I remembered Ludington and her treacherous ride. It seemed to me that both her feat and her subsequent disappearance from our historical texts summarized in one dramatic anecdote precisely the issues I wanted to consider. She was a girl who had assumed a set of responsibilities that made grown men balk and whose apparent impulsiveness drove her to greatness. She had a name too few people knew. Ludington remained obscured, is how the American Battlefield Trust puts it. Hers was just the kind of narrative I hoped to include. It lent credence to a hunch I had started to formulate, that girls have been a foundational and underappreciated force in moments of American Revolution, both literal and metaphorical. I wanted to explore how girls have shaped the social and protest movements that continue to refine this still-in-progress nation, not because I believe that adults should be more like children, but because I know that in the process of learning how the world works, we sometimes forget that we can remake it. There were more obvious examples than Ludington to reach for: the girls on the forefront of climate activism, the high school students who risked their lives for civil rights, labor reformers and feminist radicals. I would get to them later. What the Ludington example seemed to offer was something closer to biblical justification. From the founding of the United States, girls had performed these crucial, unsung duties. Ludington was like a prophetess to me. I was a New Yorker with a terrible sense of direction and no driver's license. She was a rabble-rouser before the advent of GPS. I was enthralled. It took about 10 minutes of digging into the research to hit a snag. New work had cast doubt on the idea that Ludington had ever undertaken that pivotal ride. A paper published in the New England Quarterly found little evidence of her expedition in contemporaneous accounts or in the books published in the aftermath of the war. Her trip appears to have first made it into the public discourse in 1880. Ludington's descendants provided another account in 1907. Paula Hunt, who wrote the skeptical article, points to Ludington's exclusion from anthologies of women in the Revolution as evidence that she never rode. I understood the claim, but I couldn't accept it. Ludington's supposed expedition, and her omission from the kind of histories that Hunt cites, resonates because it speaks to the fate of countless women and girls whose stories we don't know. Did her absence from the record prove that she never did embark on that ride? Or was it rather that, in her era, no one had cared to write it down? Perhaps Ludington set forth just as the USPS would have us believe. Perhaps there are discrepancies in our inherited accounts. Perhaps the truth bears no resemblance to the tale, as a certain congresswoman tells it. But Hunt has made one...